What did you mean in the title of your book that the Jewish people had been invented?
Hello and welcome. Could the founding of Israel have been based on a total misunderstanding of history? One Israeli historian has created huge controversy with his findings that the idea of a single Jewish tribe is wrong, and that much of the justification for the founding of the Jewish state of Israel is actually political. When the nation of Israel came into existence in 1948, it was the culmination of centuries of dedication by Jewish nationalists to the idea that their people must return to a land from which they'd been exiled almost 2,000 years earlier. But many modern archaeologists and historians have begun to doubt whether or not this event really happened. Other discoveries are shedding new light on key past events of the Jewish people in the Holy Land and creating some uncomfortable dilemmas for those who live there now. Joining me to discuss this from London, his theories and the controversy he's stirring, is Shlomo Sand, a professor of contemporary history at Tel Aviv University and author of the book The Invention of the Jewish People, which was on the bestseller list in Israel for several months and has recently been translated into English. Professor Sand also teaches at the University of California at Berkeley and the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris. Professor Sand, thanks very much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Sir, I have to start off with a quote from your book where you say, or giving the reason why you write it, you say, "I could not have gone on living in Israel without writing this book. I don't think books can change the world, but when the world begins to change, it searches for different books." Considering what you've written in this book, you can't be very popular among many Israelis right now, and I wonder what difference you think you're going to make putting these views forward. What difference will it make to the situation in Israel?
As I said, I am not sure that books can change the world. But, with this conflict without ending, I have a pessimist position. But I thought that it's very important to say something about the myth that give birth of the Israeli state and why this myth that helped to create Israel, this same myth can destroy Israel. You see, this ethnic myth. And this is a part of my book.
What did you mean in the title of your book that the Jewish people had been invented?
It isn't a provocation. I meant it. I think that the Jewish people was invented. I think that in the second half of the 19th century, the Jewish people was invented.
Now, you have drawn on all sorts of evidence to show us that things which most of us took for granted as having had happened, even if they did not justify the foundation of the State of Israel 2,000 years later, actually never happened at all. Tell us about some of that.
One thing, to take, for example, the exile. See, the exile is so important to the Jewish history. Everybody knows that the Jewish were exiled 2,000 years ago. But, when I started to work about it, I was surprised not to find even one book, one research book about the exile. The exile of the Jew in the beginning of our time didn't happen. Now, it shocked a lot of people. It shocked myself when I started to work about it. But the Jewish were never exiled from Palestine. I was talking about the myth of the exile in the beginning of the area.
Indeed, that's my point, that if the Jewish people were not exiled from Palestine, then even their tendentious claim of that exile to justify a return, a right of return, thousands of years later, is necessarily invalid.